This video accompanies our work with the observation description assignment, meant to supplement and have you think outside of class about this activity that you're asked to engage in that we all kind of take for granted. Observation description is something everyone can do, can't they? Just like writing, people can take such skills for granted and never really think about working on them or that they might need improvement. But as we reviewed in class, they can. They can be improved upon. They can be trained, of course, for your professions. And even the brightest among us could use some lessons at times. If you take a look at this famous little passage from Sherlock Holmes, he's giving a little instruction to his friend Watson, who's no dummy himself, but Sherlock Holmes is the person who says to him, "You see, but you do not observe." What's the difference? Sherlock Holmes is able to see the little details, but also put them together to be able to observe and tell what they mean. And that's part of the point that he's trying to make to Watson here. Watson is noticing things, but not noticing either enough or in putting them in relationship, putting his observations in relationship to each other to make some sense out of them. Should really remind you of another reading we've had, Samuel Scudder. Samuel Scudder is the person who looks at a fish, but it's not so important what he looks at because what he's really looking at is himself observing. In fact, in some sense, it is important that he's not looking at something that he enjoys looking at. He studies something outside of his field, really to study something that's inside of him. And that's part of the point of the reading, that he's observing himself observing, trying to master an art that Agassiz is trying to teach him. Okay, so observation description. Let's go right to what makes for a vivid description, because I'd like more discussion of this in class. A vivid description has to really follow some suggestions and really show itself as vivid, though there are some things I can caution against and some things I can steer you toward. If you remember the examples we gave in class, the entryway of the building was dirty, the child played on the beach, the attendant walked toward my car, the sounds at dawn are memorable, the holiday dinner was delicious. It doesn't matter that these sentences aren't yours to begin with, because we're just taking a look at samples. Usually people have had an experience where they've walked into a dirty space, or the child in front of them at the beach is playing, or that they're at a holiday dinner and it's quite delicious. You can take any of these examples. The point is to really notice what's happening in description and see whether you can create your own guidelines for creating successful descriptions yourself. Take a look at some from students. The entryway of the was dirty because it was grimy. This gives me a little bit. It kind of completes the sentence, though in terms of what the student's able to do with the sentence, it's not really very much. Plus, aren't there different kinds of grimy? It can be grimy with cooking oil, motor oil. I don't know. Is it dripping from the ceiling? Is it something I'm going to slip on? Tell me what it looks like. Tell me what it's like to be there. This one's kind of descriptive, but you can do so much more with it. So our point here is to avoid what's not descriptive, like stopping soon, which is what this student did. Or how about this one? The entryway was dirty. There was chips, food, and rodents. Okay, we get a nice list of 3 things. There were chips, food, and rodents from this student. But it is a little bit listy. It doesn't matter what kind of chips. Are they broken, soggy chips? Are they chips in a bag? What's the food that's there? Is it discarded, greasy food from the restaurant? Is it a 5-course dinner? Are there rats there as rodents? Or something else? Show us what's there. That's another lesson. The child played at the beach with not a care in the world. This one I like especially because I get it a lot. It can be students who are describing things or think they're describing things, and they talk about things, in this case, as not having a care in the world. But really, what are they seeing? If we push the student a little further, what is it that they're seeing that shows us that the kid doesn't have a care in the world? We're noticing something on the face, something that we're used to, something that we recognize. To give it a comparison, we know that it's not anxiety. The kid's probably not anxious or angry or mean or any other kind of motivation, activity, emotion. How do we know that he doesn't have a care in the world? What does he see on his face? What does he look like? That's what we have to do to describe well, I think. How about this? The attendant walked toward my car and held out my keys. This is more like actions. This and then this and this, and he did this. But I'm curious about, how did he walk? There are all different ways we can describe him walking. You don't have to have specialized language for it, though some of this might seem a little bit specialized. Did he saunter, amble, stroll, lurch, race, lunge? Was he slow? Was he fast? What did he look like while he was walking? What does his face look like? What's his attitude? How do you know? How about this one? The sounds at dawn are memorable. The birds were making noise and the trucks were passing my house. Oh, I want to hear what those birds' noise sound like. I want to know which trucks. Are we talking about the garbage trucks or the semis? How would you describe even the noise that they're making? They're not irrelevant. If we're communicating and we're insistent on communicating well what it was like to be there, instead of providing the YouTube or a recording of what it was like to be there, put it in verbal language. Give us a visual image through language. So you're trying to recreate for us what it was like, but using the tools of language to do so. And how about this one? The holiday dinner was delicious. It made my mouth water. This is an opportunity, if you're using this example, to really give us the meal. Did we skip a step here? I'm hungry. Show me what what is making your mouth water. Don't skip over the step of describing the food. Oftentimes, good descriptions can provide us with visceral responses where it hits us in our gut, and we have almost a reflexive response to what's happening there. I'll show a few more in class, and we'll review some as a class that really are effective. This one doesn't quite do it for me yet. Okay. Now it's your turn. We'll discuss these and more in class. What do you think about these, just as you're in the mind and mindset of thinking about what makes for a good description? The entryway was dirty because there were dust bunnies. The entryway was dirty. Somebody should clean it up. Everything seems pretty cagey and sketchy. The child played on the beach alone when suddenly a young girl came up and smashed the sandcastle with a shovel. You could tell the boy was furious. You should be able to answer what's going on with these descriptions. Where's the descriptive part? What can be improved about the descriptions? See what you could come up with. See what you think about these. We'll practice more with your descriptions and see more examples in class. The more we use your descriptions, the better. So if you're having ones, if you're writing out ones for your paper and want to test them out, those are the best use of our time. Watch for vagueness. Seems obvious, and yet I have to remind people of it. Oftentimes I can press people a little further with each step of their writing. They're birds that are making noise, but really what kind of noise are they making? Is it the chickadee-dee-dee? Again, if people were more precise, they could be more precise. They could notice themselves being more precise and calling on the language to describe what it was that they are seeing, hearing, smelling, and all the rest. Our list descriptions. We get to talk about that in class. Think about it, though. Is a description just telling stories? This happened, then this other thing happened, then another thing happened. If you feel your descriptions are complete, look again. Are the words as specific and apt as they can be? Have you skipped over the actual description? Sometimes students can really be helped and find more to write about, actually, by taking a look at what they've already generated, what writing they've already created. Usually in what I see, there's a mix of non-descriptive and descriptive elements. I put little smiley and frowny faces there because the non-descriptive pieces we're trying to lessen. The descriptive pieces we're trying to do more with. My advice is you need a description and lots of it. As you start this assignment, as you get into it, remember that the more specific and detailed you can be from the start, the better. Because you'll have more to draw on for your paper. It may not all factor into the paper, but the idea is that you're working with much more raw material and can choose the best from what you have. You can and should practice description, which is, I think, the thing that students really do take for granted, that you can improve upon the description. They don't have to be lackluster or partial. All right, there's more practice to come. Descriptions, as I said, should include what you saw, heard, smelt, felt, just as in Samuel Scudder. Overall, what you sensed, including all the senses, which we also review in class. Other common problems or questions that I get in class. Do descriptions have to use flowery language? Think about that. And the examples I've shown in this little video and talked about in class in Samuel Scudder's description, are they flowery? Are they poetic? Oftentimes poetic language can be distracting. I'll have more to say about this in class, but I question whether you have to have specific poetic skills in order to do this well. You simply have to be able to want to describe something accurately, I think, and precisely. Coming up, what purpose do descriptions fill? Because that oftentimes blocks us and prevents us from creating good descriptions. And I'll have this hint to give. Usually you'll get the thesis going during this paper, and I'll talk about a thesis in a future video, during or after you begin the observations. If you try to think of your thesis before you actually observe, you're doing it in reverse, I think. Notice how Samuel Scudder does it. He finds his thesis for his article after he starts writing it. Then you decide which observations fit. People don't like that. They want to know it beforehand. But I'm telling you, for this first assignment and really for some other work that we do this semester, and really for college, you're starting by getting into the subject itself and trying to understand it. You may have a partial idea where you're headed, but if you decide beforehand, it'll actually set up a barrier to good observation. Students often hesitate to describe their observations with language. However, they often think it's, again, something they can take for granted or something they simply can't do well or improve upon. Yet, without close description and observation description, what can people do? What can students do if they get into a class and they can't even describe what it was that they read, what it was that the teacher said, what it was that they were learning? There's a problem there, I think, and it happens not just in class but in life. If people go into a job and they're unable to observe closely and describe, what can they really do in their job? With skills at description, what can't they accomplish? It's really open to all sorts of possibility if we think about what people can do with the skills that we've talked about and are reviewing in class. And indeed, when you think about it, is there a profession in life where these skills are not essential? When they're not needed for almost every activity? I know that later in the semester, we can't do anything unless people are noticing things with their writing, noticing things about the class, noticing things about what makes them more at ease with an assignment that's given. All of it really depends on careful skills of observation and description.